Like we're already muted. Is that true? You can still hear me, correct?
I can hear you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh, yep. Perfect. Okay.
Cool.
Karen's here. Excellent. Hey, Karen.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Karen, meet James. I met James this week when I signed up for Midpage.
Hey,
Hi,
Karen, how
James.
are you? Nice to meet you.
Good. James, what city are you coming to us from? Odd way
I'm
to
from
ask
New
that.
York.
Uh-huh.
I'm currently out in Long Island at my parents' house.
Nice.
James is getting married tomorrow,
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
but
Thank
but
you.
he's meeting with us this morning.
Well, I mean, as most people do the day before they get married.
Right. He's got his priorities straight.
Yeah, it's
Which I
kind of a
appreciate.
tradition, right, Mike? Oh man. Well, that's super exciting. Then are you off for a trip afterwards, or are you doing a honeymoon later?
We're gonna do one later in August, in Italy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, going down to Sicily.
I will be
It'll
in New
be quite
York.
hot.
Yeah, get ready. I'll be in New York Labor Day weekend. It's
Oh,
been
yeah?
a long-term desire to go to the US Open. So this
Really?
year,
Oh, really?
we're gonna go see some tennis.
Fun.
Yeah.
I've never done that, but it seems like such a fun event. Like you always see people going on the subway there, and I'm always
Right.
jealous.
Yep.
Plus, they have cool gear, good hats.
Well, I think hats are important if you're gonna sit all day and watch tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
Karen, sorry, we are live on YouTube.
Oh, great.
I did not.
In case anyone checked in early, yeah.
No, we got a little time yet here too.
I was hardly on the desk this week. I've done mostly administrative work this week. But I did have kind of what I thought was an interesting homestead question, which is a guy wanted to know if a couple is married, they each had homestead property, and they continue to each live in their own homestead property after they get married, can it remain homestead?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing there are zero. That's a challenge.
Not a whole lot on it. It was interesting though. I mean, it was one of those where, we looked in the typical places, Donnell's Minnesota Digest and Minnesota Practice, and just not a lot there. So I just started Googling in individual counties, like I think Stearns County and Clay County in Minnesota, had little FAQs. Can we still claim homestead?
Really?
If we're living
Google.
in our old Google comes through again. And of course, when you think about it, that homestead claim is a tax issue. So counties are interested in how that works, as is the State Department of Revenue. So the state says, you can't. And these individual counties were saying, well, you can't, except possibly in somewhat unusual circumstances. But they were out in these rural counties that didn't matter to my patrons. So I didn't read what those exceptions were, but it was interesting that kind of this roundabout Google is the way that I got to the response.
I did a ton of work on Google. I've been slammed this week. I barely know my name. I was also looking at local materials. I was looking for public notices, and I wondered if you had. I actually could use your help. Probably, I'm not sure. There's this company called PNW, Public Notice Weekly, and I the archives, it just was not available. Apparently the statute required an ordinance to be published in, a local newspaper. Can't find it digitally anywhere.
Huh.
I know they were using this service as late as March because of Google. But the archives were impossible to find. And I was, running, we've tested those Boolean style Google searches before, and those seem to work pretty well, but man, I was stuck. So I had that one that I was working on that yesterday, and then Midpage
Was it supposed to be published recently? This public notice?
well recently it was enacted and it's on Municode. It's
Yeah.
tiny jurisdiction municipality, but it was on Municode. And it was published in November 1st
Okay.
of 2022. So and then the statute requires at least 30 days.
Yep.
I was able to find every archived version up until the published date would have been November 2nd,
Yeah.
the day after it was enacted, but that edition is unavailable in the archives. That's the very first is the 9th. November 9th is the first archived edition that's available. I checked all of them up to currency just to see if I could find.
If one was a conspiracy theorist.
I know, right? Well, the other thing that proves my conspiracy that aliens are blocking my legal research is that the city's newsletter is published, right? So I went on the Wayback Machine
Sure. Yep.
and started looking for older versions of the website and started just spot checking. I didn't do the same. I didn't look at every snapshot.
Yeah.
But I could find the December newsletter. I could find the October newsletter. Do you think I could? Well, it's actually it would have been published in the December newsletter.
Right.
But guess which newsletter was the only one unavailable, giving me a 404 error.
Man.
So
that is wild.
And that was the second one that gave me I have zero results. I have to explain to the client I have zero and here's why. And
that's why your question was how do you explain no results.
The other one was just kind of in my view just a challenging argument to make,
right?
I just thought, and that's more of a conversation with the client than it is a legal research problem. But so I'm curious to know. Okay, all right, where are we at here? Oh, we have 5 minutes. We are early today.
Yeah, I'm gonna go close my door. Not that it does much good, but no. We're all about transparency here in government, apparently. And so we get these sliding barn door style glass doors, which are very attractive. It's just, so much for any kind of privacy. It's weird to me that I feel like managers should get some kind of space where there's sound and visual privacy in case you have to have some kind of HR discussion with someone. But luckily, I haven't had that problem. If I do, I'm going to have to go find another place in the government center.
I don't have much for news today. I don't know if anything struck your fancy this week. This is a pretty cool integration, I thought, that is interesting to me, but I don't know how broadly interesting that is. And some of the other AI launches, I think James is more attuned to, so we may wrap in Busy Law and some of these other things into that conversation.
Yeah.
The judge did in the Avianca case come down with a $5,000
is that what the sanction was?
sanction. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
start to my Friday morning. Words. So I said,
Words. They can be so hard.
can be. My AI product idea is for the elderly or for situations like this, which is a hearing aid, right? That it's trained on your speech patterns, your writing, or whatever it might be, and your calendar, right? So when I'm speaking to my mother-in-law, who is elderly, and she says, I went to the, and then all of her grandchildren and all of her family, the store, Target, where did you go? We start filling in. Why should we do that when the AI hearing aid could do that for her? Isn't that a lot more humanizing than having her family members start pitching ideas for what she knows? Or
That sounds like an episode of like a new Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys have seen that show.
Yeah.
You can imagine someone hacking into that and making some kind of, it's like a dating app and you start finishing each other's sentences.
That's a good one. That is.
Yeah.
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 The hacking problem. That's something that I'm top of mind. Suddenly grandma is international spy or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking you could go that way too, for sure. Or grandmother's plotting some nefarious something.
James, is there anywhere I should be, any webpage I should bring up before?
No, I mean, you can, I think just diving into this example is pretty good. Our website is sort of plain. I think this is better than showing like our website. So
get one of these to load. These are and part of the reason I had to disable. Oh, there it is. Look, nice.
is it like an ad blocker or something?
Could be. Well, I also have VLEX, the VLEX plugin. So I don't know if that's beyond my. That's fine. Oh, here's Folsom. Let's see how that. What happens over here in the summaries?
So I actually always tell people to just minimize that page for now, and just kind of, I find it a little distracting when you're not actually using it, but as you hover, like if you clicked on detailed summary,
right,
then it will populate.
Yeah.
Get the IRAC structure.
This is, I think, if I came to class unprepared.
No. Be a little too tempting.
This is what I do.
Yeah, our professor's going to go back to no laptops in class now.
I don't know.
Well, we already had that problem in law school. When I was in law school, people used Quimby all the time for briefs, and they have a bunch of briefs that are like law school briefs,
Sure, yeah.
And you can always tell when someone is just reading it just word for word off their class.
Quimby. I remember Quimby. I didn't use it. I don't think it existed when I was in law school, but I can't remember why we jumped into it at the Bar Association.
Is it still around?
Yeah, I think it is. They've also transitioned in. I think they do like CLEs now, and they have sort of like a bar course and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
Professional responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the outfit that was trying to become a bar partner. Offered a what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. And then Thomson Reuters used to have
sure.
What was the name of that? It basically just gave you the head notes of the case.
Yeah, and Lexis for academic passwords used to do something like that. I think they had a way that maybe it gave the procedural posture and then a super short briefing maybe they called it brief notes or something.
All
Find
tools.
law, how to cheat when briefing a case. Might as well be frank.
These clip arts are starting to freak me out. I just
Yeah.
They're a bit much, aren't they?
yeah. I mean, I understand if you're writing a blog, why bother? But ugh. You ever done this on? I'm not sure how to do a. I haven't had to do this ever for a client. But do a page or a image search on Google.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a new computer here, so I'm not. Oh yeah, no. Let's see.
You mean to take a look at an image and find out more about it?
Well, in this case, it just shows you where else it's being used. I'm not
Oh,
sure how
gotcha.
to apply it here on
Yeah.
on my Mac actually. But so this image in particular, it'll show you, all the insurance companies, all of the
Right.
Yeah.
it'll just
Right.
show you where the clip art has been used in every instance, and it's often like a DEI play for these
Absolutely.
companies. This image in particular, it's
Yep.
interesting. All right, we should get started. Sort of officially at the top of the hour here. We're 4 minutes after. Welcome everyone who's joining us live. It's the Gray Paper Pod, where we answer the question, what was the most interesting legal research question of the week? I'm Mike Carlson with Gray Paper Legal. We're joined today by, as always, Karen Westwood. Karen, before introducing James, tell us who you are.
Oh, Karen Westwood, Director of the Hennepin County Law Library. Glad to be here again.
Thanks for joining us. And James is one of is here because of one of my most interesting legal research questions of the week, another AI play called Midpage. James, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and where you come from?
Sure. Yep. I'm James Curbo. I work at Midpage. My role is one of those new weird job titles that didn't exist a couple of years ago. It's legal
Or a
engineer.
few months ago, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, a few months ago. I actually came up with it myself. Legal engineer and product strategist. So I kind of just wear a bunch of different hats. I work at Midpage, which is a very, very small, early stage legal tech startup. We're basically the short pitch is we're building the first fully integrated legal research and legal writing platform. We view it as research platforms today are really just research platforms, and then you do the writing somewhere else. But I think we all know that legal writing is really intertwined with legal research. Note taking is legal writing, and we're trying to combine things into one platform to make it a more streamlined process. And we're of course going to be using generative AI, but in a smart way that will make it easy to verify things and sort of build an AI product from scratch, but you have your hands on every little component part that's going into that brief or email or memo, whatever it is you're drafting. So that's Midpage, and yeah.
Yeah, great. And I'm excited to have a conversation about those drafting tools. There's been a lot of Thomson Reuters has jumped in with a integration with Microsoft, and we were talking a little earlier about the NetDocuments integration with the Law Toolbox, and I'm excited by these new tools as a person who drafts things on a daily basis. So eager to and the reason this became my most interesting legal research question is because just my LinkedIn feed gave me the tip on Midpage. So eager to talk more about that and a little bit about this space and this race to quickly put a wrapper around the LLM in some way. But as always, I want to start with Karen's most interesting legal research question of the week. before we officially launched here, we were just talking about the challenge of dealing with local rules and the stuff you can find on Google. What was your most interesting legal research question of the week, Karen?
Yeah, Mike, I was I was saying I had just a little question from a patron about whether I think it was he was newly married, and both he and his new wife had homestead property, and could they both continue to claim that homestead exemption if they remained living in their homes despite their recent marriage. And so I looked in a lot of the typical places I would look for Minnesota material, and I was not finding quite what I was looking for. A lot of information about how to homestead a property and what that entails under the law. So I did a Google search and just asked, once I get married, can my spouse and I both claim homestead for our homes? And I ended up finding a couple of outstate counties in Minnesota who directly were addressing that question on their web pages. And then the Minnesota Department of Revenue also responded to that, basically saying, no, really, choose one homestead or the other.
Pick one. Yeah.
Yeah. But it sounded like there may be some kind of, I don't know, agriculture exemption, something like that. But it was another reminder that Google's search engine is really sophisticated, and it never hurts if you're running into a roadblock to jump on Google and do a quick search and get a little more oriented.
Yeah, I mean, the Department of Revenue website, authoritative enough for that kind of result, I think. And it's funny, I hear people complaining about the value of Google search now quite a bit, that it's no longer as good as it used to be. And I don't, I'm more than a pedestrian user of Google, I think, and I still feel like it's delivering, relevant results. It is super challenging. My local issue was, as we were talking about earlier, were public notices, and the challenge there is that Google gets me to the location I need to be, but the archives of the local newspaper that I was reviewing were not indexed, right? They were all PDFs without the ability to, not OCR'd, so I had to review one at a time, just cycle through the archive images one at a time. And so it's not awesome, but it at least got me to the right location. James, you're more technical in nature, and you're in the AI space. What's the current thinking on just using, and maybe you don't know, I dropping this on you last minute here, the Google search as a strategy versus something like an AI tool?
Well, I guess I'd start by saying Google search is sort of a implementation of AI. It's different than these new generative AI tools, but I mean, even classical Google search has a little bit of generative AI in it when you see the suggestions for when you're typing in your search. But I mean, when I was a litigator a couple months ago, a practicing litigator, I use Google all the time it's just a great sort of like catch-all to wrap your arms around whenever you have sort of a novel research issue. I feel like it's a great starting point. And that's a tip that I got from senior associates that would just say, what's the first thing you do when you have any question? You just go to Google and start there. And it's sort of a good way to help generate search terms and figure out where you want to go for your more targeted search. But yeah, I mean, I could see that changing a bit more, just because now with things like co-counsel, you can sort of search in co-counsel by asking a question, just like you would search in Google, and get sort of like a little memo response with sources. So I think there's going to be more overlap between the AI tools and Google.
Hey, Mike, for your question, did you call the newspaper then?
I did not. I was working on this one about 9:30 last night, and that was not in the same time zone. But I will likely give them a call today.
Yeah, I was remembering in library school, right back when, I was there in the late 80s. So there's a bit of online access to different sources, and of course a bunch of paper, but we used to always be told, remember, your telephone
Yeah.
is a
It is a
reference
legal
tool.
research tool. Now we're going way back, right?
Exactly.
The challenge here is that this is like a service that whose job it is to publish local news. In other words, it's not the local newspaper.
Gotcha.
It's a national company that publishes these public notices, and that's
Yeah.
how they, they generate their revenue. So I'm not sure. I'm not calling,
Right.
the local person who's at the diner.
Right. The local Argus newspaper. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting the corporate office. So
Yeah.
I don't have hope for that either. Ultimately, I don't think that the determining the effective date of the statute matters for that purpose, for when the public notice. So it is, and it matters for this matter. So it's an important issue, but yeah, it's going to be detective work in this case, which is kind of fun. It's not always.
Yeah.
But my other interesting legal research question of the week was also just another situation. I don't know, Karen, what you do if you're not finding anything, what you tell your patrons. There are times where the work that I'm doing is demonstrating that that I did the work, right? That there's nothing available. And my strategy is a little different for that each time. Sometimes I'll say, here's my work, and I don't believe we're finding anything. Oftentimes there's a reply memorandum that has to go out that says, look, logically, this also does not make sense. But that's putting it even more negatively than I mean to, because it's not illogical necessarily. It's just you understand what the policy is behind the rule or the statute, and it doesn't apply in your situation. And so how do we talk about that in a way that is both professional and meaningful, in a way that, especially I'm speaking through another attorney to the client, what kind of actionable information can you give to someone that says, let's think about this in a way that makes sense for your business, kind of argument. I don't know if your patrons are coming in for all kinds of different things, but you must have come up with their zero.
Yeah, and it depends, right? If it's an attorney asking the question, I'll do something more similar to what you do, Mike. I'll say, look, here's where we checked. We tried these sources, we tried these search terms. We are not coming up with anything useful. But get back to me if you can think of a different avenue to try, and we can try further. So we rarely say there's nothing out there, because we're trained up, right? You never say never. And sometimes we'll send something, right? This didn't seem like what you were looking for, but does this help? And I'll send that off. With a non-attorney patron, I'll often say something along the lines of, well, I'm not finding anything directly on point for what you're looking for. So what lawyers do, and they spend time being trained in how to do this, is they try to analogize something that's similar,
for sure,
to your argument. And that's not an easy thing to do. And that's one of the reasons attorneys are paid a lot of money, is because that takes time and you have to march through. Because I do have people, I think it's human nature, who just say, well, there has got to be an easier way to do this. How do lawyers do it? I'm like, this is how lawyers do it.
Yeah.
Well, it must be faster. How do they do it quickly? I'll say, look, I see lawyers sitting here all afternoon. And maybe this will kind of dovetail into what James can help with. Is, of course, vendors are working all the time to try to increase efficiency, and speed and thoroughness. But at some point, you just have to do the work, and we all want a quick way to not have to do that.
Yeah,
Human
be
nature.
interested in James. I wonder if I still have it up here. Thomson Reuters just recently did a survey of attorneys, legal departments, and tax professionals about whether or not they would use generative AI, and it looks like I don't have it up here any longer. But of course, they all said very interested, we're investigating, but it's not going to replace my job because of that kind of work, right? I have to make the conceptual leap. I have to make the argument. The AI right now is not saying, or is it?
Right.
It is not saying, well, what about this, right? There's a difference between Karen sending the document that says, I'm not finding anything, but here's a related document, and between that and making that leap that just says, hey, follow-up question, have, what should we think of next? What's what is that conceptual leap?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that we're trying to capture with Midpage. Is a lot of the earlier implementations of generative AI for litigators and researchers, it's just getting an answer. And so when the answer is, I don't know, it's great if the generative AI will say that and not make something up. But if the answer is I don't know, then you're it's kind of useless then, because you're just going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. And the way that lawyers come up with those analogies and creative arguments is just by getting into the weeds and getting into the case law and clicking around a whole lot, and just wrapping their arms around everything. And I think what we're trying to do with Midpage is make it so when it comes time to synthesize whatever it is that you just spent 5 hours researching, you don't have to go back and say, okay, now I have to group all of the things that were a little similar but not quite on point. We're going to put that in this section of the memo or of the email, and then I'm going to talk about all of the searches I ran and the cases that say the exact opposite of what the partner I'm working for wants or the client wants. You have to somehow convey the research that you did, even if it wasn't exactly on point or it wasn't the outcome you wanted. And for me, when I was doing a lot of research as a junior litigator at a big firm, that was always really hard to sort of synthesize everything after the fact, even when you were finding good cases, but really hard to do when you're not finding good cases, because you're not usually taking notes proactively when the case doesn't seem on point. And then, a few hours later, when you realize, oh, you know what, that case that wasn't really on point, that's kind of the best I have. So now I got to go find that again, and I got to explain why that's the best I have. And so we're trying to just make it easy to sort of create a breadcrumb trail of your research, so that when it does come time to synthesize everything and does come time to explain why there's no results, for example, you have it all in your back pocket, and it was seamless to generate that on the fly with AI, but also very easy to verify because you're just doing it in real time. So yeah.
That seems very smart to me. Very interesting. That circling back to the case that you ignored 4 times is so common. I mean, I still do that. I mean, and because you don't know what you don't know, and ultimately it's part of the learning process. So that ability to synthesize that document that you found 30 minutes ago is such a common
and then so many people will just say after you send your initial email, where maybe you just say okay, here are the 3 good cases I found, then you get the follow-up email saying did you search for this, this, and this? And you're like, well, yeah, I did, but I know I did, but I don't really remember exactly what my findings were because I wasn't focused on that. And there's just so much information lost, and for law firms and for clients in particular, that's money loss basically, because you're just wasting time. And so trying to capture everything so you can do it all in one fell swoop, and just document things as you go. And you're still going to be doing the lawyering.
So let's chat a little bit about what Midpage is. I've got the Chrome plugin here, but this is not the
Yep.
Midpage product necessarily. I did install it, and it seems to work wonderfully well on Google Docs. I can ask it a question, and it gives me an answer that most copyright attorneys are familiar with this case, so they easy to kind of understand what the whether or not the results here are accurate. Gives me the summaries of the cited cases, and I've seen this in other tools like the VLAX tool, for example, where you can bring up the summary of the cited case. You're not having to jump to new web pages, which it adds a nice bit of efficiency. But sorry, tell me what is Midpage? What are you building for folks who've never heard of it?
Yeah, we're just trying to streamline the research and writing process and create one unified writing and research platform. And so this Chrome extension is sort of the first step that we took, and it's such a brilliant team of engineers, and they're based in Berlin. I'm in New York, but I go there every month and a half or so. And so I basically described this kind of tool, what you're looking at now, the Chrome extension, in my interview with Otto, the CEO, and we drew some pictures, and they basically threw it together in about a week because they're just really quick. And that's one of the nice things with such a small team. There's like 6 or 7 of us, almost all engineers. You can just kind of adapt on the fly, and right now that's super important, obviously, because the technology seems to change like every week. There's some breakthrough now. And so we're just trying to roll things out, and this Chrome extension was the first thing. And yeah, I wanted something that was basically what would I want as a junior litigator doing the research. And the thing that always bothered me was just opening up a billion tabs and getting lost. And I called it the sea of tabs. It's like the most overwhelming feeling. And so if this is one way where you can sort of hover over a case really quickly and just say, oh, okay, this is a motion to dismiss that I'm writing and I'm researching for. I want it to be granted. Hover over a case that sounds interesting, and that motion was denied, so I'm not going to end up citing that case. So you just skip it. You don't click into that tab. Or if it does sound interesting, you get a more detailed summary and get some quotes and can read a little bit more. But at the end of the day, this is just a minor piece of sort of what it is that the actual product will be, which will be a unified writing and research platform where you have all of these sort of tools that summarize things and can generate short text all in one place under one hood, and with places to store your work product. Yeah, I think we're hoping to roll out our first version of the platform in, I don't know, let's say a couple weeks.
Oh, really?
Looking for early testers. So if you're interested.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, for sure.
But yeah, the Chrome extension is just the first thing we wanted to just get out there and get feedback on, basically.
We were chatting a little 2 weeks. That's impressive. We were chatting earlier this week when we met about the race to put a wrapper around all of this technology, which, as you say, is already available. The drafting tools. Copilot and Thomson Reuters have a partnership now through Microsoft 365 as a drafting tool, which is pretty cool. And Net Documents and Law Toolbox are now together, which is cool because it includes that document automation piece that we've talked about in the past, along with calendaring rules. And as all of these integrations happen, I think just drafting a document feels like a more and more of a seamless process, that you're not having to jump out to different resources to develop one document that's all integrated into to your regular workspace. What's it like right now? What's it like to be in this space? I guess is there a race on? Does it feel super competitive?
Yeah. I mean, that was before I decided to leave my cushy job and get into this space full time. That was like the first question I had for Otto, the CEO. I was like, what about this company? They're doing something similar. And he
Yeah.
basically is his view on it is like it doesn't matter really who does something first. It's just how you do something, and if you can really make the user feel comfortable, and make them like your product, then you're gonna win. You know, there were search engines before Google became Google. So yes, it's obviously a race, but I'm not really worried. I think we're in a really great position because we're small, and because we can sort of define. We can basically work from first principles, which bigger companies can't do because whatever they're going to end up building, whatever their implementation of this new technology will be, it will be built in a way that sort of is compatible with their existing product.
Yeah.
And you see that with like Lexus, for example. I mean, they acquire companies and sort of tack them on. And at least for me, when I get like an email asking me to do research, I just go to Lexus and do the research. Like I'm very rarely using these tools because I don't even know they exist half the time. And they're not really integrated into the core of the product. And so I think these bigger companies are just going to have a harder time rolling stuff out really quickly. And so yeah, I think it is a little daunting to be in this space right now, but it's I couldn't imagine a better time. It's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. We haven't touched on the innovator's dilemma in almost a decade now. There used to be, before Atomic Habits, there was the innovator dilemma, which everyone was reading, and folks fearing that it wouldn't be able to turn a ship around because it would just cannibalize an existing product. But does the fact that this technology truly just available for anyone to pick up? I mean, OpenAI, its use is inexpensive, right? I mean, to pick up and adopt the APIs or whatever it is you do, your API calls are super cheap, aren't they? I mean, this is not for a developer an expensive project, is it?
Yeah, that's right. And I think what the complicating factor is it's just the more API calls, the slower it gets, and also it runs into memory issues, so results can get worse over time, and that's really like where the creativity and the genius of the engineers comes into play, is how to get this to work in the specific way we want. But no, you're right. It is relatively cheap, and so it is a technology that's just out there and it's available to
Yeah.
you can just use it. Like it's already here. It's just a matter of implementing it in the right way that people will actually want to use it. So whoever can do that first will have a leg up, but whoever can do it best will be, I think, in the long term, the most successful.
For sure. Yeah, that's exciting. It is exciting. I mean, I know there's a lot of hype around it, but I'm not reading it as hype necessarily. I just think there's a lot of, we don't know what's happening yet.
Yeah.
Anything that concerns you about this rapid pace of development around these tools? Or we were talking about hacking my product idea for earlier, which I have to say I hadn't even thought about it. Like, am I just a Pollyanna here? Or?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the concerns are just like being in the right place at the right time. And I mean, obviously this is like a hot time for legal tech. It's like very exciting. But lawyers they're not trusting of technology. They're slow to adopt new technology. And so that's my main concern, is not scaring people away. We had that Avankia or whatever that the New York case was with the sanctioned lawyer. And that it's a shame because chat GPT is like a dirty word. And anytime you just see GPT, the LLM, now that's associated with chat GPT, which is associated with this lawyer who did something that was just a big mistake, and I'm sure he had good intentions and just made a big mistake. But so my concern is that is being a little too early, and right now people are going to be sometimes turned off by generative AI because it's not always going to be perfect. But I do think in the in the next 3 years, 5 years, it's going to be just a totally different landscape. It's going to be integrated into everything we do.
And we probably won't be talking about it as much.
Yeah,
Natural language processing is not the magic that it used to be, and we don't talk about that as an option even. We just use it,
yeah, exactly.
part of our strategy.
It's really interesting to me, as someone who's been in the space for a long time, that we used to segment research so cleanly from writing.
Yep.
Here are the steps to research, then you have your little stack of results, and then you move into writing. And this idea of integrating, and the way you described, James, your experience as a junior associate really resonated with me, even though I worked as an attorney after I'd been a librarian for years. I still would fall into that. Look at some cases, they don't seem quite right, move on, all as a means of sort of building my set of cases I was going to use, and then start writing. And this, if you could summarize every case and you don't have to do the work, then it becomes time efficient. Where if you have to sit and write everything, even for cases you don't think you're going to use, that's very inefficient. So by sort of auto-generating some little summaries as you go along, I can really see where in a day-to-day life that would be more efficient and also kind of less segmented than maybe the way we used to approach this process.
Exactly. I think one of the things I was talking to some of my colleagues about at Midpage was I've been thinking recently about this analogy between doing legal research and writing, with like if you have to, if it's like 1970 and you're having a dinner party and you want to set up a playlist to play during the dinner party, you go to the record store and you're trying to collect some records to kind of like progress throughout the night, and it has to fit a certain mood and maybe be more upbeat at the beginning and more mellow at the end. And you would go into a record store and you'd sort of sift through all of the crates and you'd look at the covers, you'd talk to the clerk, and you'd make stacks and stacks, and you'd see like one track on the back of one album, you'd like the cover art of another album, and you'd go to the back of the record store and then you'd listen to little previews. And then this whole process, you do it all and you have your records, but then you have to go and make the playlist and put it in the right order. But now we have things like Spotify, and it's just so seamless to do this on the fly while you're listening to music. You can quickly preview a song and add it to the playlist. So to me, it feels like we're doing research and writing like we're shopping for records in the 1970s still. And we're kind of pushing towards making like a Spotify type look and feel for research and writing for lawyers. If that makes any sense at all.
It does. And so does Karen's point. I mean, how it still baffles me to this day sometimes, and maybe this is my age as well, but the request that says, I need a case that says that X. Mm-hmm. So you already know what mood you want to set for that stage of your brief. Yep. This is soul or whatever, because but how do you know that's the law? Right. I mean, what if you're wrong? Ultimately, though, I think it doesn't matter, because you're thinking logically about your client's issue, and you want that to be logically. You're thinking that ought to be the law. You can redraft, you can edit. Throughout the drafting process, that's not what the law turns out to be. That doesn't mean you're done, right? It means you have to edit your brief.
Exactly.
but I always wondered about that. It's like these drafting tools that Westlaw had, for example, where you were writing your brief. It was based on natural language processing. You'd be writing your brief and like, oh, I need a citation for this. So you'd highlight that text, paste it into the search engine, which would just run a natural language search and give you a list of cases.
Yeah, like a parallel search.
And right, which is great, but I need all of the other tools to know, whether or not it applies to that particular situation. So it never felt like a really great product to me, to do it that way. But there are more and more now, more integrations that feel like they make a lot more sense as we're drafting with a parallel search. Was that the name of the product, or is that just what you call it? Is that an industry term?
Parallel search is like searching by proposition on case text. That was like sort of case text, their big thing. When you basically you get an email from a partner saying like, find me a case that says X, and you just type in X and then get a bunch of cases that are responsive to that proposition. And sometimes the case will say X, but it will say X is completely wrong, and so it's a useless case for you. Yeah.
No, like I can't write the brief. I have to go back to the client and say we're done.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say my favorite is the case that says this case is about X, or X is a thing, but actually this case is not about X at all.
Exactly.
Not that X is wrong. It shows up, but let's just
doesn't apply here. Totally inapplicable.
And for like that is exactly why lawyers are so hesitant to just trust AI. And I don't think that's going to change. And even if AI is right 99 or 100% of the time, we still have an ethical obligation to read the cases, and litigators get up in front of the judge and have to be able to talk about the cases. So like, anything that just gives you an answer is, even if it's a right answer, like you still have to read the cases and do the work. So we're basically trying to be in the business of just helping with that process, and instead of like flipping it on its head and just taking the work out of it, because I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, we have the problem of a sea of tabs, as you say, but it's still a hypertextual practice. Or intertextual, I'm not sure what the right term is, but it's a network that we're reviewing of citations, and there's however we ease that burden is great, but it's still the nature of the practice, I think.
Exactly. And I think like it sounds like just trying to streamline research. It's not as big as like just the concept of LLMs. It's not as life-changing sounding, but when we're talking about what we really want to do is like 10x the productivity of litigators, that is a pretty big deal. And when you boil it down, we're not just talking about litigators, we're talking about anybody that's doing research and basically collecting knowledge and then sharing knowledge. So this is the first use case is litigators, and it makes the most sense, and it's a perfect use case for this kind of technology. But it's easy to see like why this is such a big deal, I think, because you can apply it to all different types of stuff.
We are past time. James, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the day before your wedding. I just my apologies.
Thrilled. I love podcasts, and this is my first podcast, so it's a joy.
My apologies to your future spouse. Before we wrap, anything? I'm on vacation next week, so if we do this podcast, if I have an interesting legal research question, I'll be sure to share it with everyone, and we'll be broadcasting from beachside next Friday, I hope. But Karen, you got anything coming up this week that we should be?
No, I don't think any breaking news on the research front for this coming week. It's summer.
It is, it is. I'm excited to have some downtime if I
Yeah, I
manage
bet
to
you are. Yeah.
scrape together. James, what about you? You got anything legal related on your calendar? I always ask this question at the end without reminding folks that I always ask this question.
Yeah, no, I mean, nothing groundbreaking as far as I know, but who knows what's going to happen in this, like in the current legal tech market, like anything could change. So, you know, if Open API changes some kind of integration, it might mean we're building a new product in 5 days. So I really never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we did just release our next version of our Chat GPT plugin, which is a great learning tool. It's not where you should do your legal research. That's why we're building a legal research platform. But if you're curious about, you know, using Chat GPT and you're a litigator, you should check out our plugin. It's really, really fun to use and cool.
That's a good tip. And to do that, just to remind folks and just to ask the question for myself, my own purposes, that requires the $20 a month ChatGPT Plus Pro. I forget what it plus. Yes.
Yeah. For now it does. For now it does. I imagine that will change soon enough, but unfortunately, yeah, it's for people that have to.
And that's not your revenue, obviously. That's.
Oh yeah, no. I wish.
Just to say, I mean, yeah, it's just to make it clear to folks. You might be.
I appreciate that distinction.
All right, well, very cool. Thank you both so much for joining.
Nice to meet you, James.
Likewise.
You have a great weekend.
Have a good week.
Bye.
And take care.